We have to do. Our members are trained.
Tom Fitzpatrick is president of the Colchester Ground Search and Rescue Team. He was in charge of the search for Dylan. As an outsider looking in, when you see that at 1:30-ish, a 3-year-old boy disappears, and that it takes hours to get the most important people, you guys, out there, that feels like a long time.
It does, and it's a norm though. It is very much a norm. We're not allowed to activate ourselves. We have to be activated by a police force.
So why do you think police took so long to activate you?
They were managing the scene from what we can tell.
So if they were managing another scene, and I really hope it was more important than a missing 3-year-old child, then why was the Bible Hill RCMP not notified, considering it was literally 2 minutes away? Things that I like answers for.
Would the odds of finding Dylan have been better had you guys been out there faster?
I would say no, but could we have been on the ground faster? Yes, we could have been. We could have been on the ground faster, but the outcome of it, I don't think would have been any different.
Now, Tom, you told me and Norm that if they had been there earlier, of course it could have been a better outcome. Not your fault, once again, the Truro police. But to say if you guys had have been there earlier, it wouldn't have made a difference, well, that's nonsense. That's narrating a situation, kind of like you guys were saying to me, not you, Tom. But see, the thing is that if they had have arrived within 20 minutes instead of 3 hours and some, for Dylan, of course, it could have been a completely different outcome altogether. So that to me doesn't make sense. But I believe the police are narrating Tom.
Chief McNeil denies complaints that the disappearance wasn't treated as a potential crime and says the neighborhood was thoroughly canvassed after Dylan disappeared.
Now, it wasn't treated as a criminal investigation. Rodney McDonald from the RCMP showed up and the Truro police were just standing around looking in the water. He told them that they needed to get up to the halfway house. You know, he was like, did you know there's a halfway house just up the road? You guys didn't question the neighborhood because I did a questionnaires a couple days after. Same with our private investigator. More lies. Of course I made complaints.
Jason's official complaint triggered a review of the police investigation by a neighboring police chief. Amherst Chief Dwayne Pike writes that he conducted a complete review of the Truro file and concludes, sadly, not all investigations come to a successful conclusion, but by no means does that mean that the investigating agency was negligent or unprofessional.
Well, Dwayne Pike, apparently you were completely wrong because the police complaint commissioner sees otherwise, and I will see you at the hearing also because your name's coming up. More lies.
A big part of your mission as chief of police is community engagement.
Correct.
How would you describe the engagement that you've had with Jason?
With Mr. Ehler himself, obviously our heart breaks for Jason. He wears his emotions on his sleeve, and I think he lashes out a little bit because he's hurting. So we've given Jason a very wide courtesy. However, when we update the family, if it's disruptive to have someone there that's disrupting the meeting or taping the conversations secretly and then putting bits and pieces online to create a narrative, that's not productive to the investigation. It's not productive to the family healing. We would love.
That's not exactly true either. It's because Search and Rescue was telling me one thing and you were telling me the complete opposite. And then I would find out actual proof of different things and you guys would flat out lie to my face. And then you guys would step over yourselves because I did record, because a smart person would. And then I started to catch your guys' lies. Just like you told me my son went missing at 1:15 or the 911 call was put in. But yet that was 1:24 for an example. You've done nothing but lie to us.
Nothing more than to find Dylan healthy and alive or, recover Dylan for his family. This has been hard on everybody. I feel for the family, and it's been tough on the community.
Coming up,
If there's anything, absolutely anything that shows up, we'd be back on the search.
without a trace, hope fades for a broken family
How can you even say that if you have no proof?
when W5 continues.
The Bay of Fundy is one of the 7 wonders of North America. It has a phenomenon known as a tidal bore. Twice a day, the leading edge of the powerful tide creates a standing wave of water that travels up,
It was almost sweeping them off their feet.
despite the fact that on the day of the test, the water was half a meter lower than the day Dylan disappeared.
Prior to Dylan going missing, we had 2 days of heavy rain. So Leper Brook on that day was overflowing its banks.
How high up would it have been?
I would say it would have been, for myself, almost chest height in some spots.
So up to here.
Yeah. Grown firemen that are dressed and trained to work in the water, it was almost sweeping them off their feet. And this is 3 to 4 hours after the fact that this is happening, that it's still almost sweeping them off their feet.
What you're saying
It was
is
fast.
that if he fell in there,
He was gone very quickly.
Tom believes Dylan was drawn to the raging water.
We take a profile for a 3-year-old child missing, all right? Some of the things we look at is what we call as a reflector, things that would attract them. And one of the things that would attract a 3-year-old child is water. It was rushing so loud. You could actually hear it rushing. It was so loud.
What I can't wrap my head around is if the boots didn't go out to the Bay of Fundy, why do you believe that Dylan did?
Because of his size and his weight. His size and his weight, he would have pushed small objects away. He would have pushed small objects away where the boots got caught up actually in debris along the sides and in the water.
Jason's vocal online and in-person criticism of the way the search was conducted has left deep wounds.
I have a 3-year-old grandson. So it's a challenge. We put a lot of hours. The members put a lot of hours. Ridicule and criticism on our members and that stuff that we've received has been unjustified. And we feel with the family, but the family's got to realize that we've done what we can do. If there's anything, absolutely anything that shows up, we'd be back on the search.
When you look back at the way this investigation was handled, is there anything that you would do differently?
No, not from an investigative standpoint or a resource standpoint or calling in specialists or anything. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the desired outcome that we want or the family wants, but we're still working and we're not going to give up finding Dylan.
The lure of the water, the swollen brook that feeds into rivers connected to the highest tide.
You can go there at the highest times for that brook, and there's not one spot in that brook that is chest deep. I've walked it. In the water, outside the water, rainy days, non-rainy days. To hear the river, to say my son heard the river, that's you can't say that. Because my son's never heard the river, never been to the river, and you couldn't hear the river at Dorothy's house at that time. That's incorrect. But for search and rescue, you guys are amazing, and it's because I asked for volunteers to help me and teach me some things at a community search for Dylan. And you guys, you spoke to the team and they were thinking about it, and then when the day came, no one showed up, and I felt brokenhearted. So maybe I lashed out, but I have the right to have feelings, and I know deep down that you guys have no part in this whatsoever. You guys' strings are pulled by the police, and I know that now. My greatest apologies for anything I've said. But it made it a lot harder when they put a no contact order between me and search and rescue. Explain that to me. And it wasn't because I was rude. it was because they were telling me stuff that was going against the police. You know, I'm not going to sit here and lie and tell you any different.